What if the cruelest punishment a town could devise was not a noose nor iron bars, but a forced marriage to a grieving cowboy hidden in the wilderness? What if the barren widow they mocked was sent away as a living joke, exiled to a man who had buried his wife and son in silence? Would shame break her, or would the prairie storms forge a destiny no one in Cedar Ridge ever dared imagine? The people of Cedar Ridge called it charity, but Anna Whitmore knew it for what it was, punishment. That morning, in 1873, the boarding house porch felt less like shelter and more like a stage. Her carpet bag rested at her boots, its handle softened by years of nervous fingers. Inside lay her life reduced to scraps: patched dresses, a weather-worn Bible, a few trinkets from a husband buried too soon. Everything she once dreamed of was pressed into a bundle lighter than it looked, heavier than she could bear. Neighbors lined the street as though the departure were a holiday spectacle. From saloon doors, behind lace curtains, through shopfront glass, their eyes clung to her like burrs. Whispers darted between gloved hands. The barren widow, too much shame to keep, too much burden to house. Even her own kin would not meet her gaze. Samuel, her brother, shifted on the step beside her, his words thin and brittle. "You understand? This is for the best. Martha's expecting again. 4 mouths already." Anna cut him short. "I understand." Her tone did not tremble. Years of gossip had forged it into steel. Still, pity pressed down like chains. She was to be shipped off, not to the east, not to any family, but to Jack Monroe, the reclusive rancher who buried wife and child on the lonely prairie and had chosen silence for company ever since. The town's cruel joke was simple: send the barren bride to the grieving hermit. 2 broken pieces tucked away where no one would see them. Old Pete Sullivan's wagon creaked to a halt. He tipped his hat without meeting her eyes. "Morning, Miss Anna." The crowd leaned forward as she stepped onto the boards, her back straight, though humiliation weighed like stone. Somewhere behind her, a child's voice asked, "Ma, why is Miss Anna leaving?" The mother's reply carried like a verdict: "She's going where she belongs." The words followed Anna down the dusty street, past the church where she once stood a hopeful bride, past the graveyard where dreams already slept. By the time Cedar Ridge shrank into the horizon, she felt stripped bare like a storm-bent tree clinging stubbornly to life, though every root ached with shame. Rain chased them out of Cedar Ridge, flattening the prairie grass and soaking Anna's patched dress until it clung like another weight she hadn't chosen. Pete Sullivan kept the wagon steady through mud, but he offered little talk. His silence told her what the town had not dared. They all believed she was finished. At the fork in the trail he drew rein, eyes softer now, as if pitying the cruelty he had been asked to deliver. "This is where I leave you, Miss Anna. House is up the track. If you wish, I could tell them you rode east instead." Anna gripped her carpetbag tighter, her jaw set against the rein. "There is no east for me. This is where I'm meant to be." She stepped down into the muck, skirts heavy, hair plastered, dignity the only thing she still carried. Pete nodded once, tipped his hat, and rolled away, leaving her a solitary figure against the horizon. The walk to Monroe Ranch stretched a mile, yet felt endless. Grass brushed her skirts. Prairie wind keened like an old widow's cry. At last, the house emerged from the storm, a gray structure leaning against emptiness, the barn sagging, the chimney smoke thin and reluctant. She climbed the steps, boards groaning under her weight, and before she could raise a hand, the door opened. Jack Monroe filled the frame. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair streaked with gray, his eyes as cold and vacant as winter sky. "You're the woman from town," he said, voice flat as stone. "Anna Whitmore," she replied, chin high, the water dripped from her lashes. "You're late. Where's your trunk?" "By the gate." "Too heavy." He brushed past her without another word, returned moments later with the trunk balanced on one shoulder as though it weighed nothing. He set it gently inside, then motioned toward the hallway. "Your room's at the end. Was my wife's sewing room. Cleared it yesterday." Her heart clenched, but she only whispered, "Thank you." The house smelled of ashes and neglect. Dust veiled every corner. In that silence, Anna realized the punishment had not ended. It had only begun. She changed into dry clothes in a narrow room, emptied of another woman's dreams, then found a plate waiting on the table: beans, cornbread, salt pork. Jack ate his supper outside on the porch, leaving her alone with thunder and her own exile. When he returned, rain clinging to him like another skin, he leaned against the doorframe. "We need to be clear. This ain't marriage. You needed a roof. I needed help. That's all." "I understand," she answered steadily. His gaze lingered, sharp and unreadable. Then he gave a single nod. Agreement sealed, not by rings or vows, but by resignation. Outside, the storm howled, but inside, Anna lay awake, staring into darkness. The town believed they had buried her in shame beside a man who wanted nothing, yet storms could carve new paths where none existed, and Anna was not done yet. The weeks that followed tested every ounce of Anna's resolve. Dawn arrived before the rooster stirred, gray light spilling across the prairie, cold as judgment. Jack rose without a word, boots thudding, door creaking shut behind him as he vanished into the fields. He did not wait for breakfast. He did not wait for anything. Alone, Anna wrestled the silence with labor. She scrubbed floors crusted with years of neglect, coaxed the stove to life until smoke curled stubbornly from the flue, and clawed weeds from a garden plot nearly claimed by wilderness. Her hands blistered, her back throbbed, yet she welcomed the ache. It proved she was still alive. Jack kept his distance. Often he ate on the porch, as though her presence reminded him of wounds too raw to touch. When he did speak, it was only to issue instructions: stack wood by the shed, hang tools in the barn, wash on Mondays. His words carried no cruelty, only emptiness. But Anna was not meek. One afternoon, when he told her the garden was too far gone, she lifted her chin. "So am I," she said, "but I'm still here." Then she turned the soil again, daring life to rise. Weeks later, small green shoots pierced the earth, and Anna's throat tightened at the fragile defiance. The next morning she found the fence mended, posts straight, wire taut. Jack said nothing of it, but she knew whose hands had worked through the night. It was a silent truce, acknowledged in small offerings. She answered in kind. The barn, once chaos, grew neat under her care. Tools lined the wall like soldiers awaiting orders. She never asked, but one evening she discovered a bundle of wild herbs on the table. Flavor for her cooking? Gathered from somewhere out on the range? It wasn't conversation, but it was something. September carried frost on the wind. One dawn, Anna woke to find her breath visible in the cold, frost-etching lace across the window pane. Jack hauled wood into the house, jaw set against the bite of winter. "Gonna be hard," he muttered. "Need to drive the cattle south before the snow." "I'll help," Anna offered. Surprise flickered across his features. "You ride?" "My father raised horses." That afternoon she mounted a sturdy mare named Buttercup. 30 head of cattle stretched across the field, breath steaming in the sharp air. The work was brutal, wind cutting through fabric and skin alike. But when a steer bolted, Anna wheeled the mare, driving it back with firm hands and sure seat. Jack's eyes narrowed against the wind. "You ride better than well enough." Her lips curved. "Told you, I grew up in the saddle." For the first time, his mouth softened into something close to a smile. "Full of surprises, aren't you?" Her chest warmed in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. That night, long after the herd settled, snow clouds gathered heavy on the horizon. The land braced for the first storm, and so did they. Snow swept across the plains like a white tide, burying fences and howling down chimneys. Inside the drafty cabin, Anna shivered beneath a thin blanket, her teeth chattering against the storm's fury. Jack studied her a long moment, then tossed another log on the fire. "No sense freezing in separate rooms," he said gruffly. "We'll bed down here." They made pallets on opposite sides of the hearth, propriety intact, but the silence cracked beneath the roar outside. Jack spoke first, voice low. "Sarah loved storms. Said they proved God still moved in the world. Me? I just hear what I lost." Anna's heart tightened. She told him of Thomas, of the doctor's words that had turned her from wife to outcast. They called me barren, as if that was all I was. His eyes met hers across the fire. Doesn't make you less of a woman. Sarah lost, too. Near broke her both times, but it never changed who she was. Tears pricked Anna's eyes. No one had spoken such words before. She whispered, "Then what makes a person whole?" "Loving something enough to keep going," Jack said. "Work worth doing. Maybe someone to share the load." The storm raged, but within the circle of firelight something fragile stirred, trust, perhaps, or the first tender shoots of a bond neither dared name. By morning the world lay under a blanket of white, sparkling like glass. Jack poured coffee, his hand brushing hers in the exchange. Neither pulled away. "North fence is down," he muttered. "We'll fix it together. Together." The word rang like a promise. Winter bled into February, the days a blur of frost and labor. Yet the walls of silence thinned. Jack began to tell stories of Missouri. Anna spoke of the boarding house and the stairs that had followed her. They laughed sometimes, carefully, as though laughter might shatter what they had built. Then came the knock. Soft, almost lost against the wind. Anna opened the door to find a young woman swaying on the porch, fever burning in her eyes, a bundle clutched tight to her chest. She whispered her name, Rose Sullivan, and collapsed into Anna's arms. Inside the bundle, a baby whimpered. For 3 days, Anna nursed Rose. Jack tended the fire, fetched water, did all he could, but the sickness was too strong. At dawn, Rose smiled once more at her child and was gone. They buried her on the hill, snow piled around a simple wooden cross. Anna stood at the grave, the infant in her arms, her barren heart breaking open with an impossible new love. Jack laid a hand on her shoulder, voice steady. "He needs a home, and we've got one." The baby's name was William. His cries filled the cabin with life neither Anna nor Jack had expected, echoing through the same rooms where silence had once ruled. Anna rocked him through sleepless nights, humming lullabies half forgotten from girlhood, her arms aching yet unwilling to let go. Each time William's small fingers clutched her dress, she felt something inside her mend. Jack surprised her with his tenderness. He cradled the child against his broad chest, speaking in low tones about cattle, rivers, and weather, as if the boy were old enough to understand. One evening, Anna watched him pace the cabin floor with William tucked beneath his chin, whispering, "He's a good listener." For the first time in months, Anna laughed, a sound so light it startled them both. In town, whispers stirred. Cedar Ridge women clucked behind lace curtains. How convenient, they said, that the barren bride now had a child. Pity twisted into suspicion, suspicion into scorn. Anna bore the stares in silence, but Jack's patience was shorter. When Mrs. Henderson made a remark too sharp, his jaw hardened. "This is my family," he declared before the mercantile crowd. "Anyone with a problem can take it up with me." After that, gossip dulled, but the judgment lingered. Winter gave way to a muddy spring, and with it came a carriage too fine for Cedar Ridge's rutted streets. From it stepped Charles Hartley, his coat polished, his boots spotless. He carried papers that claimed William as his son. "I can give him what you cannot," he told them, his voice smooth as oil. "Opportunity, education, a real name." Jack's reply was iron. "He already has a name, William Monroe, and he has a home." The fight that followed stretched beyond prairie fences and into courtrooms, drawing the entire town to witness. Hartley's lawyer painted visions of privilege, of Eastern schools and wealth. But Anna's witnesses spoke of love, of sleepless nights, of sacrifice. They spoke of a woman who had been mocked as barren, yet now cradled a child as if he had always been hers. Still, the contest was fierce. Each day in court felt like another storm battering the fragile family they had built. Anna held William tighter, terrified that the law might see only bloodlines, not love. And then came the revelation that shattered Hartley's case, proof that he already had a wife and children back east, that his interest in William was not fatherly but rooted in greed and inheritance. The courtroom held its breath as the Reverend laid down the proof letters bearing Hartley's signature, naming a wife and 2 sons in Boston. The polished gentleman's mask cracked, fury flashing in his eyes before shame dragged them downward. Murmurs rippled through the benches. Cedar Ridge, once eager to condemn Anna, now leaned forward as if to shield her with their presence. The judge's gavel struck like thunder. The adoption stands. William Monroe remains with Jack and Anna Monroe. Relief surged through Anna, dizzying, overwhelming. William gurgled in her lap, clapping small hands as though celebrating his own victory. Jack's arm came around her shoulders, steady and warm. For the first time since Cedar Ridge had cast her out, Anna felt not merely tolerated but claimed. Yet triumph carried its own burden. That night, in the quiet of the ranch, Anna sat by William's cradle, watching his tiny chest rise and fall. A question gnawed at her. Had they won because of truth, or because the town pitied her still? She bent low, pressing her lips to William's forehead. Whatever others believed, she knew this child had chosen her as much as she had chosen him. Spring deepened into summer, and the ranch changed with the season. Gardens bloomed, fences held, the barn stood proud once more. Work was endless, but laughter threaded through the labor now. William learned to crawl on cabin floors once dulled by dust. Jack's voice softened, his silences shorter. When the Reverend finally bound Jack and Anna in marriage before God and neighbors, the church rafters shook with cheers. Anna wore a plain blue dress, her hair braided with wildflowers. Jack looked younger, as though shedding years of grief. William cooed from Mrs. Morrison's arms, his bright eyes fixed on the couple who had fought to keep him. To the crowd that once mocked her, Anna was no longer the barren widow sent away in shame. She was a wife, a mother, a figure of stubborn grace. Still, beneath the celebration, Anna carried memory of the whispers that had first driven her here. What began as a cruel jest had become her salvation. And yet destiny was not done testing the fragile family carved from loneliness, for the West was vast and unyielding, and its storms both of nature and of men always waited just beyond the horizon. Summer burned gold across the prairie, but shadows never stayed gone for long. Travelers brought whispers of Hartley's bitterness, how he swore vengeance after the court stripped him of claim. Though disgraced, men like him rarely surrendered. Jack kept his rifle polished and eyes sharp on the horizon. Anna prayed the storm would pass them by. One dusk, as cicadas hummed and William toddled at her skirts, a rider appeared. He was dust-covered, hat pulled low, yet the set of his shoulders carried menace. Jack stepped onto the porch, hand resting on his revolver. The stranger tipped his hat. Hartley sends his regards. Before steel could flash, Anna gathered William and fled inside, heart pounding. A shot cracked the twilight, echoing across the open land. Silence followed. When she dared look again, the rider was gone, chased by Jack's steady aim. The bullet had torn only the rider's sleeve, but the message was clear: their enemy would not relent. That night, Jack held Anna close, his voice low. They wanted you buried in shame. Now they want what you've built torn apart. But we'll stand, Anna. We'll stand. And they did. Together they fortified the ranch, mended fences with vigilance, kept watch through nights bright with moon or heavy with storm. The town, once their judge, now rallied to them. Pete Sullivan brought extra seed, Martha sent quilts, even Mrs. Henderson offered preserves without comment. The cruel joke had turned, piece by piece, into a story people wanted to believe in. 2 broken souls, once cast aside, rising with a child who bound them into family. Yet the true twist was quieter than gunfire or gossip. It came one dawn when William stumbled toward Jack, calling him Pa, the sound innocent yet mighty enough to shatter every wall grief had built. Jack's gray eyes filled not with storm, but with light. He lifted the boy high, turning toward Anna, and in that moment they both knew blood had never mattered. Choice had. Love had. The barren bride, the grieving cowboy, the orphan child, 3 fragments of sorrow that the world had deemed worthless, had fused into something whole, something unbreakable. What began as punishment had become promise, a vow written not in paper or law, but in the stubborn heartbeat of a family chosen against all odds. Autumn settled gentle on the land, laying gold across the fields and painting the ranch in quiet triumph. The Monroe homestead, once gray with neglect, now breathed with life. Smoke curling from the chimney, gardens stubborn with green. The sound of a child's laughter carrying farther than wind. For the first time in years, the house felt like more than shelter, it felt like home. Jack rose each morning no longer with silence on his lips, but with words meant for Anna. Fence needs mending near the south field, or coffee's hot, come sit a spell. Small things, but after years of emptiness, they rang like bells. Anna, in turn, filled the rooms with warmth. Bread baking, flowers gathered from prairie edges, lullabies drifting long after William fell asleep. The town, too, began to soften. Men who once smirked at Anna now tipped their hats. Women who had whispered behind gloves now pressed small gifts into her hands, a spool of thread, a pie left at the door. No one spoke apology aloud, but actions carried their own language. Anna accepted each gesture with quiet grace, not forgetting the cruelty of the past, but refusing to be ruled by it. One evening, as dusk bled across the prairie, Jack stood beside Anna on the porch. William toddled between them, clutching a wooden horse Pete Sullivan had whittled. Jack's voice was low, almost hesitant. Started as a joke, them sending you here, but look at us now. Anna leaned into him, the memory of that first cruel morning rising sharp in her chest. Some jokes, she whispered, turn out to be blessings in disguise. The words lingered as stars pierced the darkening sky. Jack pressed a kiss to her hair, his breath steady. We're not broken anymore, Anna. We're whole because we chose to be. And beneath the endless western night, with William nestled between them and the prairie stretching silent and eternal, Anna believed him. What had begun as exile was now belonging. What had begun as punishment was now promise. Winter returned, but it no longer felt like a threat. The winds howled, snow piled against the walls, yet inside the Monroe home warmth held steady. The fire blazed bright, William's laughter rang against the timbers, and Anna's voice wove through the rooms like a hymn. What had once been silence had become music. Jack, who had lived so long with grief as his only companion, found himself speaking of tomorrow. He spoke of planting more wheat come spring, of raising a new barn with stronger beams, of teaching William to ride when his legs were long enough. Each plan stitched another patch into the torn fabric of his life. Anna, too, changed. The woman once bowed beneath, whispers now carried herself with quiet pride. Each day her steps grew steadier, her hands more certain, her laughter freer. She no longer avoided the gaze of townsfolk on market days. Instead, she met their eyes, William balanced on her hip, Jack steady at her side. Still, shadows lingered. Hartley's threat had not vanished entirely. Travelers spoke of him sulking back east, bitter at his failure. Jack remained watchful, his rifle within reach, his jaw tight whenever unknown riders crossed the horizon. Yet Hartley's absence became a lesson. Danger might knock, but fear would not rule their lives. One night, as wind battered the eaves, William stirred crying. Anna rose, rocking him by firelight. Jack watched from his chair, the glow softening the hard lines of his face. You were meant for this, he murmured. She looked up, startled. Meant for what? For him. For us. His words held no hesitation, no trace of doubt, and in that moment Anna felt the last of her old chains fall away. No longer the barren widow, no longer the town's punishment. She was a mother, a wife, a woman forged in storms yet unbroken. The prairie outside stretched endless, still harsh, still unforgiving, but within the cabin walls, Anna knew they had built something stronger than gossip, stronger than grief, stronger even than the wilderness itself. A family bound by choice, sealed by love, and tempered by fire. Spring arrived with thunderclouds rolling across the prairie, but this time Anna did not fear the storms. She welcomed them, knowing rain meant wheat would rise, grass would fatten cattle, and the earth would turn fertile again. Where once storms had symbolized loss, they now promised renewal. William, growing sturdier each day, toddled after Jack in the yard, imitating his father's stride. When he fell, Jack scooped him up, brushing dirt from his small hands, teaching him to rise without shame. Anna watched, her heart swelling with every stumble, every triumph. In the boy's laughter she heard redemption. In Jack's steady presence she saw healing. And in herself she finally recognized strength she had long been denied. The town, too, bore witness. At church socials, women who once whispered now sought Anna's company, asking advice about gardens or praising William's rosy cheeks. Men asked Jack about cattle prices, no longer with suspicion but with respect. Slowly, Cedar Ridge rewrote its story of her from the barren widow cast off to the woman who had carved dignity from exile. One warm evening, as the horizon flamed orange, Anna stood with Jack on the porch. William slept in her arms, his breath soft, his curls damp from play. The prairie stretched wide, endless and wild, yet she felt no smallness within it. Jack's arm circled her shoulders. "They sent you here to vanish," he said quietly, "but you became the heart of this place." Anna pressed her cheek to William's hair, her gaze steady on the horizon. "No one vanishes if they keep choosing to live," she whispered. Stars emerged, one by one, across the vast darkening sky. The house behind them creaked with age. The land before them lay unbroken, but within their small circle everything was whole. Anna knew storms would come again, of weather, of men, of fate, but she no longer feared them. She had faced the worst and found not ruin, but love. And under that endless western sky, with William between them and Jack beside her, Anna finally understood. Home was not given, nor granted, nor spared as charity. It was built, chosen, and fiercely kept. The tale of Anna Whitmore began as humiliation, crafted by a town that believed exile could erase her worth. They had called her barren, cursed, a burden too heavy to keep. In sending her to Jack Monroe, they thought they had written the last chapter of her life, a cruel jest meant to bury her in obscurity. Yet the prairie has a way of reshaping stories. Just as storms carve new rivers through stone, what was meant as punishment became the very soil where love took root. Anna's strength did not come from defiance alone, but from endurance, an unyielding choice to keep moving, even when shame pressed like lead upon her shoulders. Jack's redemption did not arrive in a single moment of courage, but in the slow act of opening his heart again, one gesture at a time. A fence mended, herbs left on a table, a word spoken when silence might have sufficed. And William, the orphan child, became the thread that stitched their fractured souls into one fabric. Their story reminds us that dignity is not granted by gossip nor stripped by cruelty. It lives in the choices we make when no one watches, in the labor we give to barren soil until green shoots rise, in the love we extend to the fragile even when our own hands still tremble. The West was harsh, its winds merciless, its judgments swift, but even there tenderness found a way to endure. For those who listen, Anna's journey carries a simple but enduring truth. Storms will come, and with them loss, shame, and exile. Yet storms also cleanse, and within their fury lies the chance to begin again. No soul is worthless who dares to choose love over despair or belonging over bitterness. Even broken pieces, when bound by trust and sacrifice, can form something stronger than what was lost. So remember her when life casts you out or calls you less than whole. Remember the widow who became a mother, the hermit who became a husband, the orphan who became the heart of a home. Their story was forged not in ease, but in fire. And it stands as proof that even in the wildest frontier, compassion can turn exile into belonging and sorrow into grace.